morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Law Schoolers. In this episode, we are continuing our discussion on secure transactions and priority of secure transaction. Who is going to have the most priority? Here in this episode specifically, we are going to be talking about PMSIs, because PMSIs have what is also referred to as a super priority. That is, according to Article 9, Section 9, 324A, a PMSI is going to have priority over any other security interest unless there is another conflicting PMSI. And as I mentioned, this is often referred to as a super priority, but there are going to be different rules depending on what kind of collateral is at issue within the secure transaction. So, let's go through this and work through these different types of collateral and how this principle is going to work depending on the different kind of collateral. The first collateral we are going to be focusing on is goods other than inventory or livestock. So goods generally, just exclude inventory or livestock. This is going to be discussed in Article 9, Section 9, 324, subsection A. What is the rule? Well, if a secured party, the first party, has a perfected interest, security interest in equipment, and second secured party has a PMSI in the same equipment, then the PMSI is going to win as long as it is perfected within 20 days of delivery. So you've got perfected security interest from secure party 1. They did it first. You have a PMSI secure party 2. That PMSI is in the same equipment and it's perfected within 20 days after delivery. That's your rule there. If that is the case, well then the secured party 2 is going to win. The person who has the PMSI is going to win as long as it is perfected within 20 days after delivery. Okay, that's goods other than inventory or livestock. What about inventory, goods that are inventory? Well, this is outlined in Section 232, subsection B. For the PMSI party to win, they need to first be perfected by the time that delivery occurs. Second, they need to provide notice to any other secured parties that there is a PMSI in the inventory, and there's a whole procedure for that. That's outlined in the statute, or rather proposed statute adopted by the states. If you want more information, you can go look there. Third thing is that notice is received within 5 years before the debtor receives possession of the inventory. And finally, the notice needs to say that there is a PMSI and that the PMSI is about the inventory that is in question. So 4 things there. PMSI will win if it's perfected, if it provides notice, and in that notice, it's received within a certain time, and it says that there is a PMSI on that inventory that has been received. Okay, so that's goods and then inventory. What about PMSIs for proceeds? There are different rules that are going to apply to the proceeds of goods. To determine which proceeds attach and are perfected, we are going to follow this standard procedure. First, we are going to determine whether or not there's priority in the original collateral. Second, we are going to determine whether the proceeds are attached or perfected. That's just a bit of a review of Section 9, 315 A, C, and D. I'm not going to go over that again. If you want to go over that again, just listen a couple episodes back. This process, of course, for proceeds needs to be done for each different type of collateral and each different type of proceed. And when I say different type of proceed, I just mean if a different collateral has proceeds, you need to do the proceeds analysis repeatedly for those different collaterals. And then the third step is figure out the priorities of those proceeds using the 322A analysis, which is attachment and perfection. Okay, so when it comes to goods that are covered by 324A, again, this is a priority of PMSI, then the super priority rules do not change for the proceeds. However, for inventory, a PMSI would only maintain a super priority for cash proceeds, and the remaining proceeds needs to follow the analysis underneath the general rule of 322A of attachment and perfection. Who comes first? Who has attached, if they haven't attached, perfection, if they haven't perfected, etc., etc. Okay. There's a couple of other things that I want to mention. Just very, very briefly, I want to mention the double-debtor problem. I say briefly because it's not a problem anymore, because Article 9 resolves the problem. Essentially, what Article 9, Section 9 through 25 does is it protects creditors who may make purchases, and if when those purchases are not, protects creditors who may make a purchase and did not receive a notice of any other debtors associated with it. It just protects them. I won't get into the whole what is the double debtor problem because it's not an issue. Okay, and then finally, deposit accounts. As far as the last type of collateral goes for PMSIs, deposit accounts can only be perfected by control. There are several ways to control a deposit account, and each has a different. Each kind of illustrates what kind of priority that secured party is going to have. For instance, a control agreement is going to be no control. Control by a depository bank will beat a control agreement, and then a control by becoming the depository bank's customer is going to beat control by the depository bank. I kind of messed that up a little bit. What I mean that is not part of the PMSI. It's those are two different analyses related to priority that are a bit unrelated to PMSI, but they're at the same time so small. I meant to combine it with this, and I forgot to point that out at the beginning of this. So PMSIs, we talked about how they have a super priority and the rules that are associated for goods other than inventory and livestock, inventory and proceeds. And then I should have separated out the double debtor problem and deposit accounts as being two different things that are related to priority, not related to PMSIs, but I included in this episode because it's the last part of PMSIs, of priority, before we go on into enforcement, which is when one party wins, somebody defaults, how do you get the collateral? But that's everything from this episode for the things that I wanted to talk about. PMSIs are going to have a super priority. There are some exceptions to that, of course, because there always are in the rule of law. But that's kind of where we left off, and where we are going to leave off and pick up next time is with enforcement. Have a good one. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Law Schoolers Podcast. If you enjoyed the show or the material shared on the Law Schoolers website, you can support Law Schoolers by becoming a patron at patreon.com/lawschoolers. I also wanted to provide a quick disclaimer. Nearly all Law Schoolers material is unedited due to the sake of time and a desire to keep the content as raw as possible. Additionally, the material is only provided for educational purposes and is not to be used as legal advice. If the material is used as legal advice, Law Schoolers is not liable for any legal outcomes. Thank you again for enjoying the show.